Well, Jimbo Fisher said the quiet part out loud, and I think a lot of Auburn fans agree.
Well, Zach, I actually just finished crushing some chicken farm, and I am freaking ready to rock and roll.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We will jump into what the addition of Memphis defensive lineman Morris Joseph Jr. means for this team with our guest today, Justin Ferguson, for a little Ferg Friday action. Of course, he with the Auburn Observer. But Jay Ferg, first things first, we are recording this just minutes after one of the craziest press conferences I've ever seen. Yesterday, Nick Saban calls out Jimbo Fisher. Then Texas A&M sends out to all of its media members, hey, Jimbo's talking at 10 o'clock Central Time, buckle up. And then he just rails on Nick Saban and calls him out for several different things. And it seems like the vast majority of the college football world is like, okay, Jimbo, good for you for sticking it to the man. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I think it's deeply entertaining. I said this on Twitter, but I think this is the most Texas A&M thing possible because it's so insecure. Like, yeah, hey, Texas A&M, you out-recruited Alabama this past year. You did it. You won. And instead of being like just living with it, Jimbo Fisher could not stand the fact that he's been called out. And that's kind of a Texas A&M thing, man. They don't like being called out, and they will make a scene and make a spectacle because they have the money to do so at all turns. And so this is a good example of it. Yeah, I mean, like, this is just kind of, I won't even say blowing the lid off of it, of the whole NIL thing, but it's like, yeah, this is what's happening. And this is the back and forth that's created. Like, it's made people a little bit more bolder to, like you said in the intro, say the quiet part out loud. Like, yeah, right. We know this is happening. We know college football players have been paid to go to schools since the dawn of time, right? It's just a little bit more open now, and you can get away with a lot more stuff publicly, it seems like, in the age of NIL, especially in an age of NIL where there are no guardrails, really, because the NCAA screwed up so badly. They dug their heels in, and they didn't want change so much that you're going to have stuff like this come out. And so, yeah, it's deeply entertaining. I mean, I don't remember in my time, covering college football of a coach calling out another person by name quite to this level, right? Like, you had the weird pace of play stuff with Gus and Brett Bielema, and Saban got thrown into that as well. But that was kind of like, back and forth. There were it was a lot of veiled kind of hits at other people. This is just straight up like, hey man, you're broke and we didn't cheat. Like that's kind of the crux of it. And it's amazing to watch.
It is. And I mean, the fact that he called him a narcissist and he's not going to take his call. He's like, he tried calling me yesterday. I didn't answer. We're done. It's like, it feels like middle school drama. He said, she said type crap. And I am here for it.
He said that he should have been slapped. Like that. Think about that. Jimbo Fisher came up and said, Nick Saban, for acting like this, my daddy would have slapped you. And somebody probably should do that. Like, that's basically what he said. And it's like, that's incredible. And he's like, everybody says he's got a college football. Well, I'm going after it. And like, he just unloaded. And it's like, look, I mean, these coaches don't like each other. When you recruit and you compete at the very highest level, it's hard to have like, good relationships. I think back to like, we see these examples all the time in college basketball. Some guys get along and some guys in college football get along. It's a lot more adversarial, especially when you are swinging for the fences in recruiting and you are going and recruit. The most interesting part in all this is like Lane Kiffin's going to be Lane Kiffin and just kind of, take shots at the side. Very interesting. And they won't do it. He won't do it. I think he's smarter than that. But like, where is Kirby Smart in all of this? Because they just won the national title, right? And he learned from the best. Like, he had the Saban playbook, and they're the team to beat right now in the SEC. I think whereas Jimbo went off and was like, because like we know that Alabama and Georgia, even though the Kirby and Nick have were together for so long, we know that there have been some back and forth there about recruiting. Especially when Georgia started dipping into Alabama's territory and snagging some top folks. I would imagine Kirby's going to stay silent on this, which is probably why he's a smarter coach than Jimbo Fisher. But it's so Jimbo, it's so Texas A&M that it's like, yeah, it's incredible to watch.
Yeah, and then the whole we've built him up to be the czar of college football, and he's like he knows where the bodies are buried. It's like take it to his past, and it's like, why are you saying that, man? Like that is just such a weird approach. But the most fascinating approach to all of this, for Texas A&M's point of view, in my opinion, is ever since A&M, even before A&M came into the SEC, what was their messaging to the world? It was, we got a lot of alumni. We're a massive school. We have a massive fan base, and we have so much money. It's crazy. And then NIL rolls around, and they're like, "No, we're just small town. We're just a small town coaching staff." And it's like, own it. If you believe you're not doing anything wrong, just own it.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of Clemson and Dabo to it as well. Or
no
it's like,
question.
Yeah, we all know what's going on here. Like, and that's the thing. It's like if you recruit players at a high level in college football, I don't care who you are,
right?
There is stuff going on, whether it's above board, beneath board, whatever. Like, there's no. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, this is an Auburn podcast. Cam Newton came to Auburn. Like, we don't have to sit here and act like this is not. And I think a good thing is like Auburn fans, maybe more so that I think I've seen from Texas A&M fans and Alabama fans throughout all this, is like, especially I think the younger generation of Auburn fans are like, heck yeah, we should be paying people more. Like that's kind of the thing there. And I think that's a good attitude to have, because this is what the sport is, right? Trying to have a moral majority, like just try to have this like, looking down, we do the things the right way and you don't, and I think there's a little bit of what Alabama's doing there. Because like, here's the thing about Alabama at this point, where it's like, they don't necessarily need to like outbid everybody. They can just point to the NFL and say, hey, look at that. Let's do that. You can come do that. But like, still, keep in mind, this is the funniest part of this whole story. This is all over Texas A&M having the number 1 recruiting class in the country over Alabama. Alabama was number 2. And I think in some ratings, like if you look at average, star rating or average recruit rating, they even beat that A&M class. A&M just had more guys.
It had more, right?
And it's like, this is what's breaking you. This is what's breaking you. Like somebody pointed out, I think it was Stephen Godfrey on Twitter. It's like players are getting money right now, and the big shots in college football cannot, like, it has broken people's minds in record time, and it's so much fun to watch it play out.
It's crazy. And people are always pointing and like, there's something wrong. And it's like, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I'm fully in on like, what's currently happening is bad and broken. It's just different. And we've got to get used to what's going to happen. And I'm not expecting a whole lot of changes over the next few years in regards to the payment.
It's dysfunctional, right? It's look, I mean,
guys have always been that way.
Yeah.
And the whole parody stuff, like that that doesn't make sense to me.
The parody thing is
not
insane.
about parody. Right.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, before Saban did whatever that was in Birmingham on Wednesday night, his last thing was like, let's get back to parody in college football. It's like, brother, what are you talking about? You're one of the main reasons there is no parody. Yeah. Like, no, that doesn't like, there's only like 30 something teams that have ever won a real national championship in college football ever, period. And like half of them are in the Ivy League. And like, it's because they were the only ones playing for a while.
Right.
No, it's crazy. It's like, I think NIL could be approached a whole lot better. The way it's currently said, because there just are no rules. And what you have now is you have schools saying like programs doing whatever they want with no repercussions. And then other ones that are trying to follow the rules or what they think the rules are. And they feel like they're at an unfair advantage. Right. And it's like, it's different if you say you're at an unfair advantage and it's because the other side's cheating, right? It's a little different when it's like, oh, that's technically not cheating, or that's technically still above board because there are no rules in place. So I think we're racing fully ahead to one of two things happening.
Okay.
We're either going to get really strict really clear guidelines about what this is, and what you can do and what you can't do, because the NCAA's got to, or I mean, it might not even be the NCAA. I could see, when people talk about the Power Five breaking off and having their own thing now, college football playoff system basically operating at its own, you're going to have to do that. Or we're approaching a world where it's like, hey, y'all are employees. Let's just pay you just directly from the school. You've got the money to do it. You can do it. It's just like, you're going to do that one or two ways.
Yeah.
And, right now they're trying to hit the middle lane, and it's like there's no, you're running through a ton of traffic cones and everybody's mad.
Before we put a bow on this conversation and we move into Auburn's latest edition, Luke Robinson just tweeted out, he hosts Locked On Bama. He just tweeted out, at this rate, the only people who can afford tickets to Bama, Texas A&M on October 8th are Texas A&M recruits.
It's like the players in the game, the players in that game are going to be the only ones who have the money to pull that off. That's the thing, that man. Like, people, it's A&M is one of the great what ifs in college football, because they really don't have a ton of history, championship wise.
Right.
But man, they've got more money and more resources than pretty much anybody, save for Texas proper, maybe Alabama at their best. They swing money wise with an Ohio State. And that's crazy to think about, because Ohio State's gigantic, but like that's how it is. And Texas got a lot of oil money. If you're the ag school and the engineering school in Texas, you're gonna rack up a lot from all the resources out there.
There's no question about it. All right, Justin Ferguson, our guest today. What does Morris Joseph mean for Auburn football moving forward? We tell you in just a moment. But today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. Look, I love brownies. Look at me. I freaking love brownies. But you know what I love more? Brownie batter. Sometimes I eat half the batter just while I'm making brownies. Imagine if you could lick the brownie spatula clean and get some protein in, and it'd be good for you. Well. Built Bar has you covered there. They've got a new creation, and this one's better than ever. The Brownie Batter Puff. Yes, you heard me right. This Brownie Puff takes protein bars to a whole new level, and they're available right now at Built.com. Go to Built.com right now and see all of the different flavors that they have. If brownie, for some reason, is not your thing, which I'd love to talk to you about that, but check it out. Locked15 is your promo code to get 15% off. That is at Built.com. Justin Ferguson, before we jump into Auburn football's latest edition via the transfer portal, what's going on these days at the Auburn Observer?
Yeah, so auburnobserver.com. You can check it out there. Newsletters and podcasts this week. We had a couple of really newsy podcasts, Painter and myself, talking about all the latest in Auburn football, men's basketball. Newsletter-wise, did a story on Tuesday where I broke down something called the Pythagorean expectation, which is basically an old baseball formula that tells you how many games you should have won in a year based on how much you scored and how much you allowed.
Sure.
And long story short, 2021 Auburn underachieved. The good news for that is if you're looking for a bit of optimism for next season, teams usually, if they're outliers, they usually bounce back quickly. We talk about close games, fourth quarter offense, stuff like that. You can check that out at the Observer. Did a breakdown of the teams that will most likely get Jabari Smith in the NBA draft now that the lottery's come and gone. Looks like it's probably going to be a race between the Magic or the Thunder, depending on what the Magic do at 1, if they want to take Chet Holmgren or not. Did a breakdown there. And then mailbag up on Friday while you're listening to this. So a lot of stuff at auburnobserver.com. Check it out there.
All right, so Auburn adds Memphis defensive lineman Morris Joseph via the transfer portal. And so I don't really understand the entirety of this move. I talked about this when I went live shortly after it happened, but I think this is a great addition for Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why Morris Joseph picked the Tigers. I don't think he's going to start. It appears he has 1 year of eligibility left. And I think it's going to be a great depth piece. I think he offers a little bit of versatility positionally, which is great. It seems like Bryan Harsin and Jeff Schmedding really like that, which I don't know why you wouldn't. So I think it's great for Auburn. I think Auburn gets better defensively with the addition of him, but it's just, he's going to be a role player in his last year of college football.
And, role players at a big school in the SEC you can get noticed, you can get attention if his dream is to go to the NFL, right, and get attention. He was The one thing that was interesting about him is that he was committed to Georgia Tech, and then all of a sudden it was like, nope, actually I'm going to Auburn. You are in a better spot at a place like Auburn than you are at a place like Georgia Tech if it's about getting attention. Like, I not the same kind of move. I compare this a lot to kind of like the Tony Fair move last year, where it's like, yeah, you're not going to play a billion snaps here. And Tony Fair had a role, and he played a specific role for Auburn last season. He was probably I think he was like fourth or fifth in turn, maybe a little bit lower than that, and guys who had snaps on the defensive line last season and snap count. So I think you're getting another one of those guys. Super experienced. He's already played 4 years of college football. At the group of 5 level, he was a solid contributor, not a superstar, not a guy that was just all AAC every year, but a guy that's going to play a role. I think is going to try to get more attention and get more eyeballs on him, which this is what the portal's for these guys. A long way, a long road for him. Started in junior college and was a really good junior college recruit. So, yeah, this is just Auburn lost a lot of defensive linemen in the transfer portal. You brought Marquise Robinson back, which was huge, but You still lost a good bit. And you didn't bring in a ton of guys as freshmen. So you go get Jason Jones, and now you go get you go get Morris Joseph here, who I think is going to be somebody that you can trust to throw out there because he's done it before at the college level. And you just need more depth up front. You don't want to get into a situation where you don't have a deep rotation at the one of the most important spots on the field.
So how much do you buy into Pro Football Focus numbers? Because he scored pretty well, especially in 2020. His season in 2020 was awesome. Last year was like a little over 70, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, you take that. What are your thoughts on that?
Personally, I don't look into their grades a ton because they're subjective and
totally
everybody has a different bit. Now, their counting stats, which they do a great job of with snap counts, run stops, all the objective actual metrics, the actual numbers. Love looking into them, use them a ton. I tend to stay away from the grades just because it's like that process. It's like how they grade and who's grading it. It can vary totally. Wildly. But no, he did have good numbers in 2020. He had some pretty solid numbers last season. Started a lot for him. He's just a guy who I think is just a defensive lineman that you need, that you can move around, that you can plug in, that it's experienced. And it's just you don't want to get into a situation where you're breaking in people completely new on the defensive front, or you feel a little iffy if somebody goes down. This is a guy who, and the other thing there is he's played on winning teams. Like Memphis is a really good group of 5 school. And so, I think it's a lot like what they got last year in Tony Fair. I think Tony Fair had a specific role that fit him because of his size and the fact that Auburn was playing some more 3 down front stuff. But Tony Fair didn't play a billion snaps last season and yet still had an impact on this team. I definitely think Morris Joseph can do the same thing.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Justin Ferguson, our guest today. Bryan Harsin slid down the CBS Sports coaches ranking from where he was a year ago. I've got some thoughts on that. I'm sure Justin does as well. But got to tell you about our friends at BetOnline. They continue to be the number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. You can find the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, fights, NFL and college football futures. Whatever you want to gamble on, they have it at BetOnline, as they're your continued source for all sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Check it out at BetOnline, where the game starts. Justin Ferguson, CBS Sports ranked Bryan Harsin as a 27th best coach in their college football coach rankings last year. This year, he has dropped 21 spots and is listed as the 48th ranked head coach. Is that too harsh? Is that fair? I think it's a little harsh, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's 1 year. I mean, are you saying that 1 year takes away all the stuff he did at Boise State? Because he wouldn't. You do this. Obviously, they had a good thought about it coming in. Last year was very disappointing for Auburn for sure. Yeah. At one point in time, they were 6-2. At one point in time, it looked like it was going to be a pretty solid year one for Bryan Harsin, who was changing a lot. Look, I think it's just the perception of Harsin has changed significantly because of what happened a couple of months ago, like that, or a few months ago. Like that's it. Like that's what you have to deal with at this point. I think Auburn's dealing with it in recruiting. I think Auburn's going to deal with it throughout the season. And the only thing that's going to fix it is winning. Yep. And proving everybody wrong. And I know that's the attitude of this team. I know that's the attitude of this coaching staff. It's just a matter of going out and getting it done. It ain't gonna be easy, but you gotta go out and get it done. No, I think Bryan Harsin is a really good football coach that, his first season did not end well at all. And like, he will be the first to tell you they had to learn from that and get better at what, like, they have to avoid those mistakes again, because otherwise you're not going to hang around a place like Auburn long if you have seasons like that, more often than not. So yeah, I think it's harsh, but I also think it's like a lot of those, if you have a feeling like, all right, here's my opinion.
Okay.
How good a coach is should not be swayed so much by 1 year, right? A coach's quality is a coach. I mean, if you can't think about a guy like Bryan Harsin, he has been coaching at a head coach for a while. He's been a college football coach for even longer than that. You're going to say 1 year knocks you that much off, right? No, a coach is a coach. What they did in their seasons, what they did, like adapting to a new job, like all that can kind of change. To me, if you're going to drop a dude off as your perception of him, it takes multiple years of like, oh, you ain't got it anymore. Like you just like it's passed you by. One bad year where, yes, it was really bad. The ending was terrible, but you started 6-2. Like, it was looking pretty solid there for a while. So
yeah,
it's
what
so
happens
weird.
if your starting quarterback stays healthy? You don't fall off.
What happens if you beat Alabama? What happens if he doesn't drop 21 spots? He does not drop 21 spots if he beats Nick Saban. No, not at all. 100%. And that's like, you can come down to one or two plays that change that thing for him. Totally. Right? So are you really going to let that perception be shifted that much? That's my thing about those rankings. It's like, yeah, I get it. Like, you have to write about stuff in the offseason. Like, I'm in that. You're in that with doing the podcast every day. It's like, you have to do stuff, right? And I get it. I understand you try to do stuff in there, but like a yearly ranking of coaches is like, how much is that really going to change? Other than you're just going to look at it and say like, oh, this is the coach who did well last year. This is you might as well be ranking programs at that point. Or like, it's so weird. It's so weird.
It is weird. Yeah, like Herm Edwards with Arizona State, he dropped the most. He dropped 34 spots.
Well, yeah, it's like he broke a bunch of NCAA rules and somehow not fired yet. But yeah, like that. Okay, you can give me a point there, but even still, it's like.
Yeah, and then Tom Allen with Indiana drops 20 spots.
And everybody loved Tom Allen a year ago. So is Tom Allen a really good football coach, or do you have a really good team? It's like, if you're swaying yourself that much, it's like, yeah, it's just reactionary jump. But like, hey, it's this time of the year. It's a useless ranking. And I say that useless ranking, not to throw off on the thing itself, but it's like, we write a lot. It's sports. It's off-season sports content. A lot of it is useless. And once we get to the actual games, we won't think about any of this.
Yeah, you're right. But it's May. And so it's like,
you got to do something. I was plugging in baseball formulas today this week to talk about Auburn football.
That's right.
Do you think that I don't know that a lot of this stuff
we
right
love
now
it, right? I mean, as a society, like, we love it so much. It'll give us any form of Auburn goodness that we could possibly digest every single day. And that's what we're doing. That is absolutely what we're doing, man. How can people find you, read you, hear you, support you, all that good stuff, Jay Ferg?
Yeah, AuburnObserver.com. It's $6 a month or $60 a year to get a full subscription, or you can do a 7-day free trial. I will say this. We've got all that stuff this week. Got the next few days coming up. I'm going on vacation next week, at the middle of next week. So Painter is running the ship next week.
Awesome.
We've got a couple of really cool podcasts lined up with him, and he's going to do the mailbag, and then we've got a couple contributor pieces we're going to do as well. So, it won't be a lot of me next week, but if you sign up, you'll still get good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, that's at auburnobserver.com. All right, we'll be back on Monday to recap the craziness that happens over the weekend right here on Locked On Auburn.